Hi, I'm Kevin and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a review of the JetBoil MiniMo cooking system. First, I'm going to do an overview of the system itself, what comes in the box, what doesn't, how does this thing go together, what are some of the features of the stove. Then I'm going to verify the specs, the weight and the volume, and then I'm going to be doing some boil tests and some cooking tests. This thing boasts a very, very rapid boil and great fuel efficiency, so I really want to check that out. I've been very interested in JetBoil stoves for a long time, but couldn't justify buying one. I own so many other stoves, but none of them are a cooking system like this. I have a lot of LPG canister stoves that cook with a normal pot, and I've been very curious about this integrated system and how efficient it really is. And I know that folks who use their JetBoils really love their JetBoils, so I'm quite curious to see how this thing performs. So this is the JetBoil MiniMo cooking system, pretty much how it comes out of the box, and this is exactly how you would pack it up if you're going on a trip. It's designed to be quite compact, and it's fairly lightweight. Let's go through the different components of this system. Start with the lid at the very top here. It's got this nice lightweight thermoplastic lid, and the lid is very, very secure. The lid has a pour spout at one end and a strainer on the side if you're making pasta or something like that. Both the strainer and the pour spout work great. And on the inside of the lid is this orange contraption, which I'll pull out. It snaps in place there. And this is a canister stand. Now, JetBoil calls this a fuel stabilizer, but it's designed to fit your canister, and your canister clamps onto it just like that, and that will provide a little more stability for your canister in uneven situations. The canister, by the way, does not come with the stove system. That's pretty common. Nobody sells a canister with their system. They all sell it separate. And inside the cooking pot is a stuff sack, and what I've got inside the stuff sack is the stove. That prevents the pot from getting scratched on the inside. There's the stove. We'll talk more about that later. As well, inside the stuff sack, I have a pot stand if you want to use a pot other than the one that comes with the system. This clips onto the stove and allows you to use a different pot or pan. Now, on the bottom of the cooking pot is a thermoplastic bowl, which is kind of handy if you're cooking for two people. You can put half your food in here and serve somebody while the other person eats out of the cooking pot. This bowl is thermoplastic and it is exactly 500 milliliters, and it has graduations on the inside if you want to use it as a measuring cup. The cooking pot itself is made out of anodized aluminum, and it's got these D-ring handles that fold out on the side. It also has a neoprene pot cozy wrapped around it that gives it a bit of insulation to keep your food warm. As well, it protects your hands from a hot pot if you want to hold it on the side. So just for kicks, I measured the volume of the pot by pouring exactly 1 liter of water into it, and that pot is exactly 1 liter. There's no room for anything else, including the lid. And I also checked the graduations on the inside of the pot, and here's 500 milliliters of water, and those graduations are perfect. And on the bottom of the pot is where all the magic happens. There's a bracket here which snaps into the stove, connecting it solidly. We'll do that in a second. And on the inside is a heat exchanger. This is what they call an integrated flux ring, but it's really a heat exchanger. It's made out of corrugated aluminum, which helps capture the heat from the stove and dissipate it to the pot, and should make this very efficient. We'll check that out in a minute. Okay, so how do we put this together? Well, I've already snapped the canister stand onto the bottom, and next you take your stove and screw that onto the canister. Whoops, it's always, there we go. Now, if you're cooking with a different pot or pan other than what comes with it, you want to use your pot support, and you fold the arms out and you clip that into place. It's a little tricky to get it right the first time, but with a little bit of practice, it becomes easier. We'll take that off, and we'll clamp on the cooking pot itself. Again, that sort of fits into place, and then you give it a little twist, and it locks into place. It'll pick up the whole stove, and then we put our lid on. So that's how this all goes together. What they ask you to do though is to put food and water in your pot first, then light your stove, then put the pot onto the stove. So I really like this stove. Let's talk about some of the features. I've already done a bunch of tests and have really learned to like this. So number one, let's talk about the pressure regulator. I own a number of LPG canister stoves, and a few of them have pressure regulators, and I really like them. What does a pressure regulator do? Well, you may have guessed it. It regulates the pressure of the fuel coming out of the canister and going to the stove. When a canister is brand new, there's lots of pressure, and without a regulator, that stove is going to burn very hot when the canister is full, and when it's nearly empty, it's not going to burn very well at all. So what the pressure regulator does is it constricts the flow with high pressure and slows that burn down a little bit. But at the end of the canister, when you're almost empty, it's going to open up and allow for more fuel to flow. None of these are perfect. You're always going to get a hotter burn at the beginning of a full canister, and it's going to burn less hot towards the end. But the regulator evens that out as much as practical. And over here on this side is the simmer control, which is very, very adjustable. It turns, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. Lets out a lot of fuel at high and very little with the simmer. The box actually advertises unmatched simmer control, so we'll have to check that out. And on this side is a piezo igniter. So you turn on the gas, click that, and you're in business. So one of the first things I wanted to do with my review was verify the specifications, and I started with the weight. So this system is advertised at 415 grams, and on the website it says that 415 is without the canister and the canister stand, and on the side of the box it says without the pot support. So fair enough. I weighed the lid, the pot, the stove, the bowl, and the stuff sack, and I came in at a little bit more than 415, not very much. So the pot, the lid, the bowl, the stove, and the stuff sack all weigh 443 grams combined. That's about 28.5 grams more than advertised. If we add the other accessories, we get a grand total of 506 grams. I don't find that a very huge deal. It's a little bit heavier than as advertised. There can be a lot of variation in the manufacturing, and who knows, maybe they got the original weight from a prototype or something like that. It's not off so much that it really bothers me. In fact, I'm very impressed with the weight of the system. If you go to the JetBoil website, you're going to find that they have 3 basic categories of stoves. They have a quick boil category where the stoves are lighter, they have less features, they're designed to burn hot and boil water very quickly. They also have a base camp category, which is designed for large groups. The stoves have more features, they're heavier, and fit larger pots. And then they have a middle category that they call precision cook stoves. And the MiniMo and the MicroMo and the MightyMo all fit into that category. So what you're getting here is a fairly lightweight system, but it has a lot of extra features, such as the simmer control and the pressure regulator and the igniter. So I am going to nerd out on the weight of this system a little bit because I'm quite impressed, and we'll get to the efficiency in a minute. But just as a quick comparison, I grabbed a minimalist LPG stove that I have. I grabbed a titanium pot that's about the same size as this. I grabbed a pot cozy and a canister stand that I have, and I weighed all those things. I consider that a pretty ultralight system, and I compared it to this system, and you know what? They're actually very, very comparable. Here's the weight of the MiniMo system that I showed you previously, and here's the competition, so to speak. It's just a bunch of gear of different brands that I currently own, and I thought it would make a good comparison. Let's ditch some of those extra items and look at the list. That pot is only about 40 grams heavier than a titanium pot of a similar size. Incredible. The lid is actually lighter. The stove for sure is heavier, but remember, it has all those extra features, and the canister stand is actually lighter. So when you look at the totals, the JetBoil MiniMo, which is not trying to be ultralight, is only 77 grams heavier than an ultralight system. That's pretty incredible given all the features that stove has. This stove is a little bit heavier because of those added features. The pot is slightly heavier, and but the lid and the stand are actually lighter. So, this is very, very comparable to an ultralight system, even though it's not trying to be ultralight. Okay, enough chit chat about the specifications. Let's get on and do some boil tests. The MiniMo cooking system is advertised to boil 500 milliliters of water in 2 minutes 15 seconds. So that was my first test. I filled this up with 500 milliliters of water. I weighed the stove and canister separately before and after the burn, and I timed my boil time. And guess what? I came in at 2 minutes 6 seconds and I consumed 6 grams of fuel. I was pretty impressed with that. I'm not so worried about boil times. I mean, people like a rapid boil, but if you're in that 2 minute mark, that's great. It beat the advertised target, which is great. But again, I had a full canister, so it's going to burn a little bit hotter even with the pressure regulator. And they say that the 2 minutes 15 is an average time. So that's pretty good. But I was so impressed, I decided to do a series of boil tests. And this time I used 2 cups of water because that's more standard. Most YouTubers that are doing boil tests are using 2 cups of water. 2 cups is, I think, 471 milliliters. It's almost 500 milliliters, but not exactly. So I did 4 more boil tests, again, weighing the canister before and after to measure the fuel consumed, and these were my results. Each burn took a little bit longer to boil, but they were still under 2 minutes 15 seconds, and of course the canister was still relatively full, and I consumed on average 5.25 grams of fuel for that test. So each of those boil times took a little bit longer, which makes a lot of sense. As that canister burns, it loses pressure, and you're going to get slightly longer boil times, even with a pressure regulator. None of them are perfect. So you're going to get those longer times, but they were still all under 2 minutes 15 seconds. But what really impressed me was the efficiency of the stove system. My average fuel consumption for boiling 2 cups of water was 5.25 grams. That's some of the best results I've ever had with any system that I have used. So this is very impressive. Now, if you watch the channel, you know that in the past I have been very critical of heat exchangers. Heat exchangers certainly work. I've done the tests. They always save fuel, but most other heat exchangers I have tested add more weight to the system than they're worth in terms of the fuel savings. If your currency as a backpacker is weight, you want the weight of the overall system to be less, then what I have found in previous tests is a heat exchanger adds so much weight that you need to go on a trip of 40, 50, or 60 days before you actually reduce the overall weight that you're carrying. So that is not the case here. This pot for sure is a little bit heavier than a similar pot without a heat exchanger, but I'm getting tremendous fuel savings. So take a look at this graph here. This is some data from a video I did many years ago. I was doing some boil tests at different ambient air temperatures to see if the air temperature had an effect on fuel efficiency. I concluded that it didn't, but look at the data. Every one of these points is between 9 and 11 grams of fuel consumed. So let's call the average 10. With this JetBoil system, I'm only consuming 5.25 grams of fuel when I bring 2 cups of water to a boil. That's a savings of almost half. So it doesn't take many extra boils before you offset the weight of this extra little bit of aluminum. I think JetBoil's figured this out, and I'm very impressed with the efficiency of this system. The other thing I wanted to check out was this simmer knob. A lot of these LPG canister stoves are known to burn hot but not be very adjustable. So I really wanted to test that out. So I boiled some water and I reduced it to a simmer. And again, very impressed. This will produce a very low flame if that's what you're looking for. The JetBoil can bring a pot of water to a very aggressive boil. You actually have to be a little bit careful with it. But it can also simmer very, very gently. I was able to dial this way down. I was very impressed with how low it would go. This is what the MiniMo looks like under thermal imaging. It blasts a jet of heat straight up into the air, but you can easily dial that down. And you can put that pot on the heat, and that heat exchanger will capture the heat and direct it straight into the pot. This is the pot on high heat. Look at that jet. To test the simmer control further, I took off the pot and I added the pot support, and I added a small fry pan and sauteed an egg. To do a good job frying a fresh egg, you really want a low heat. And this stove was able to deliver that. I did find the middle of the pan a little bit hotter than the edges, but that worked out fine. This egg came out perfectly. There you go. We have brunch. So the last test I did was I wanted to verify the capacity of this pot for use with 2 people. It's certainly big enough for 1 person, but I wanted to check to make sure there was enough capacity with 2 people. I like a little bit of room at the top of that cup to stir my food, and little skeptical this wasn't big enough. So what I did was I filled this pot with 250 grams of dehydrated food. I know that the average person consumes about 125 grams, so 250 should be enough for 2 average people. So I filled the pot up, covered it with water, brought it to a boil. So yeah, that worked pretty well. I was able to fit enough food in here for 2 average people with enough room to stir and not make a mess. So that worked out pretty good. It's a little tight, but it worked out. I would caution though, if you are not an average person. So remember that males eat more than females, younger people eat more than older people, and larger people eat more than smaller people. So if you're a large young male, this will not work for you and your similar sized buddy. You'll probably want to each bring a stove or a pot. So the last thing I wanted to check was how well this pot cozy keeps your food warm as it rehydrates. And it normally takes about 15 minutes for dehydrated food to rehydrate. So that was part of the process. When I was rehydrating that meal yesterday, I stuck a temperature probe in here and walked away for 15 minutes, and I came back and took a look at the temperature. In that 15 minutes, the temperature dropped from 100 degrees Celsius to 80 degrees Celsius. In fact, it flipped from 80 degrees to 79 just as I was pulling the probe out. So that's not bad. Yesterday's temperatures were pretty cool. It was 10 degrees Celsius here, so a pretty cool day when I was doing those tests. I was impressed with that. The food was warm on the mouth. It wasn't hot. It wasn't steaming hot. But if you wanted your meal a little bit hotter, and because of the simmer control, you could always add a little bit of extra heat right before you serve the meal. Okay, let's pack this system up, and I'm going to show you some of the options you have when you pack up the system. Unscrew your stove, fold the handle back, pull off the canister stand. The canister stand clicks neatly into the lid, and it stays in place, which is great. Then you've got your stuff sack, and you've got some options. So one of the things you can do is put the stuff sack around a full-size canister. I call this a full-size canister. This is the medium-sized canister. And you can put that right in the pot. It'll fit neatly. You could put your lid on, fold the handles back, stick your bowl on the bottom, and then pack your stove separately. The stove will not fit in here with the medium canister. The other option you have, and I think this is what JetBoil is really promoting here, is to use a small canister. They're suggesting you can get 24 boils with a small canister. You can marry the small canister into the top of the stove, and again, using your stuff sack, you can protect the inside of your pot, and then sideways, those will fit right into your pot, and the lid will go on and stay in place, and you're good to go. Now, if you're going to put a canister in here, your pot support will not fit. Your pot support will fit with just the stove inside that stuff sack, but it will not fit anywhere else with a canister inside your pot. So you're going to be packing your pot support somewhere else. I guess the logic is that you're bringing another pot or pan along anyway. You have bigger packing issues than just this thing. So one of the few gripes I have is actually about this pot support, or rather the information on the box about it. There's very little mention on the box of what comes in the box. There's a picture which shows the pot, the lid, the stove, and it says canister not supplied, and it shows you the canister support. There's no picture of the pot support. There's no listing of it anywhere other than where it describes the weight. System weight excludes fuel, stabilizer, and pot support. So I would have had to find that fine print to know there was a pot support in the box. So being a YouTuber and wanting to open my box up on camera, I went out and bought a separate pot support. So no big deal, I'll just take that back. But it would be nice if they had a complete list of what's in the box on the side of the box. All right, let's get down to my final thoughts and my list of likes and dislikes for this cooking system. This is definitely a system, a well thought out system, and at the top of my like list is fuel efficiency. This boils water very, very quickly, although I really don't care if 2 cups of water boils in 2 minutes or 2:30 or 3 minutes. What I really like is how fuel efficient this is. It is so fuel efficient that it offsets the weight of the heat exchanger, which I have had a hard time to do with other tests. I will likely be doing a lot more tests with this, comparing different systems and doing some math on the size of the canister that you use. This is so efficient that you're going to get a lot of boils out of that small canister. So I think that's the strategy of JetBoil here. They're going to set you off for a multi-day trip with a small canister as opposed to carrying a large canister. With my old stoves, this size canister would almost last me a week. I would carry a small canister as a backup. You're certainly going to do a long weekend with that small canister for 1 or 2 people. The other thing I like is that this packs up very logically and very neatly and gives you some options. You can put the small canister with your stove in there, or you can put a large canister in. It doesn't really matter. You've got some options. Now, my list of dislikes are few, and they're really not that serious. But number one, I think, would be the capacity. I wish this was a little bit bigger if they're going to advertise it for 2 people. It will certainly be big enough for 1 person. It's certainly good enough for 2 average people with just enough room to stir your food. But if you're 2 young dudes out on the trail, burning a lot of calories, eating a lot, this pot is probably not sufficient. You probably want something a little bit bigger. I certainly would have preferred a little bit more information on the side of the box about the pot stand. Not a big deal, and I doubt a lot of people will run into that problem, but it's nice on the side of the box to list everything that is contained in the box. I also wish that the advertised weights were a little bit more accurate. This is still a pretty light system, whether it's 440 grams or 415, doesn't really matter. I think you get a lot of value for how heavy this is. Just would be nice to be a little more accurate. And I guess my last dislike, if you can call it that, and it's not particular to this stove, it's to all LPG canister stoves. Every LPG canister stove I have suffers from reduced efficiency in windy conditions unless there's a windscreen. So it'd be nice to have a little windscreen as an added feature, or even an aftermarket option that you could get. It's easy enough though. Most people in windy conditions will just find shelter inside their vestibule, or they'll set up a bit of a barrier to protect their stove from wind. So most backpackers figure it out. So overall, I'm extremely impressed with this cooking system. It is a true cooking system. It is well thought out, well designed, and that adds to the efficiency. Very, very impressed. I will certainly be using this on trips in the future, and you'll probably see some more videos from me about the efficiency of this system. I'm going to do some more tests with different size canisters and probably do some comparisons with other brands. If I can find an aluminum pot of the same size without a heat exchanger, that would be really interesting too. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to put some thought to it, and there will be more videos about this cooking system in the future. All right, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, please hit like, share, and subscribe. As always, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.